Have you ever reached out to someone, texted with vulnerability, opened up, shown your real self, and felt like it landed in a void? Maybe you reread the chat over and over, trying to decode what went wrong. Maybe you felt that sinking sensation, wondering if you came on too strong, or if you imagined the connection altogether. If you're autistic or ADHD, and especially if you lean anxious in your attachment style, it might seem like overthinking, but actually your nervous system is flagging danger based on lived experience, and it's exhausting. Hi, I'm Essie. I'm an autistic and ADHD therapist, and today we're going to talk about anxious attachment and how it shows up uniquely in neurodivergent people, not in theory, but in real-life texts, friendships, flirtations, and moments that leave you spinning. Let's get into it. Anxious attachment is sometimes misunderstood as being too clingy or needy. Really, it's what happens when you've had to guess whether connection is available, and you've usually guessed wrong. When caregivers or early relationships responded to your emotions inconsistently, sometimes loving, sometimes checked out, you learned to stay alert, always scanning for signs that something was off. For autistics and ADHDers, that alert system runs even hotter. You might already misread tone or subtext. You've been told your feelings are too much, your reactions are confusing, and your needs are inconvenient. So when someone you care about starts responding a little less, when plans get vague, when messages dry up, you feel disappointed and you brace for loss. You might even try harder. You overcommunicate, you shapeshift, you look for ways to make yourself easier to be around, because connection has never felt guaranteed, and your brain is trying to make sure you don't get left behind. If you're a neurodivergent, you've likely been taught implicitly or directly that your perception of reality is suspect. You say, "I feel dismissed," and here, you're reading too much into it. You say, "I need more structure," and you get told, "You're being rigid." You ask for clarity, and people act like you're being difficult. You ask for clarity, and people act like you're being difficult. Over time, this trains you to question your instincts. You learn not to trust the part of you that detects misattunement. So when your attachment system lights up, when someone's pulling away, when you feel that emotional gap, you talk yourself out of what you know. You apologize for being too much. You start editing your messages. You minimize what you need to keep the peace. Because deep down, you've absorbed the idea that your emotional needs are actually a flaw. This is how anxious attachment and internalized ableism fuel each other. Together, they convince you that wanting steady connection is unreasonable, that being seen should be earned, and that crumbs are enough. There's a pattern that anxious attachers, especially neurodivergent ones, fall into often. And once you name it, you start seeing it everywhere. You meet someone who seems engaged, maybe even a little intense. They're curious about you. They're texting back. They're matching your energy. You think, wow, someone who finally gets me. And then, without warning or even explanation, they shift. They become vague, non-committal. Their energy dips. Their replies stretch out. Their clarity dissolves. And you start reaching out more, trying to make sense of the shift. You offer reassurances, hoping they'll give one back. Instead, you hear that you're the one who's too intense, or that you're putting pressure on them. This is the anxious avoidant loop. You pursue someone who has an avoidant attachment style, they pull away, the distance makes you panic, the panic makes them retreat, and the worst part, it's not even about liking them. It's often about trying to resolve the feeling of being abandoned again. And added to that is the addictive element of chasing someone and getting the thrill when they respond, even if it isn't the full response you might have craved. Many neurodivergents have been told in so many ways that our way of feeling things is excessive, that our reactions are exaggerated, that our perceptions are inaccurate. So when someone starts dodging questions or being emotionally slippery, we get confused. and then we turn the blame inward. You think, maybe I'm the one being unfair. Maybe I should have waited longer to ask that. Maybe I did come off as critical when I was really just asking. This spiral doesn't start in the relationship, but years before, with a system that taught you not to trust your own nervous system. This spiral doesn't start in the relationship, but years before, with a series of interactions that taught you not to trust your own nervous system. A culture that demanded you reinterpret discomfort as overreaction. So you start second-guessing yourself. You stay quiet when something feels off. You make excuses for behavior that clearly isn't okay. And the longer you sit in it, the harder it is to leave, because your compass is pointing everywhere but true north. And here's another challenge that often presents alongside this. If you're ADHD, your brain is wired to crave novelty and stimulation, but also struggles with emotional regulation and impulsivity. So when you're texting someone new, when they give you inconsistent attention, vague compliments, surprise flattery, your brain lights up like a pinball machine. The uncertainty, the mixed messages, the maybe energy, it can feel like romance, even if it's actually emotional whiplash. You become hooked not on the person, but on the pattern. The unpredictability keeps the dopamine flowing. Every new message becomes a high-stakes event. Every silence feels like withdrawal. You convince yourself you're in love, but you're actually trying to soothe your nervous system. You're trying to end the suspense, to feel grounded. But the problem is, people who are avoidant thrive on ambiguity and aren't looking to connect. They're looking to avoid intimacy while still soaking up attention. And sometimes it's not even silence that keeps us hooked. It's the almost connection, the breadcrumb. And when these anxious attachers withdraw, they might not disappear completely. They can linger. They can leave a comment, react to your stories, maybe send a flirty text weeks later. And it's just enough to pull you back in. And because you're craving connection, especially if you're dopamine starved, it feels like a sign, like maybe things aren't over, like maybe there's still potential. But this is emotional breadcrumbing. It's just enough contact to keep you hooked, but not enough to actually build something. Breadcrumbs aren't generosity. They're delay tactics. They keep you stuck, emotionally invested in someone who is emotionally unavailable. If you're always unsure where you stand, know this is chemistry, but of the entirely wrong kind. When someone you care about goes quiet or shifts their tone or suddenly feels harder to reach, your whole body floods with anxiety. For many neurodivergents, especially those with complex trauma histories, it's a flashback in disguise. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, doesn't always show up as dramatic flashbacks or nightmares. Sometimes it's that gut-deep fear that you're about to be dropped, judged, or punished for simply needing something. You may not be thinking about your past, but your body is reacting as if it's happening again. That friend who ghosted you, your body responds like the parent who used silence to punish you. That vague text feels like the teacher who turned cold after you spoke up. It seems like you're reacting to this moment, but actually you're reacting to all the moments that came before. So no, your panic isn't too much. It's data, and it's asking to be taken. It seems like you're reacting to this moment, but actually you're reacting to all the moments that came before. So no, your panic isn't too much. It's data, and it's asking to be taken seriously. This might sound obvious, but we need to hear it out loud. Mixed signals are still a signal. If someone really wants to be in your life, they don't leave you guessing. They don't fluctuate depending on the day or their mood. If the communication keeps you on edge, if the clarity never quite lands, that is the message. A secure connection doesn't leave you in a constant state of decoding. You're not meant to become a part-time detective just to feel connected. So if someone can't be consistent, kind, and clear, that's the sign. Even if they haven't technically done anything wrong. Uncertainty is a form of disconnection. And when you're met with that kind of inconsistency again and again, you start to internalize the lesson: if I want connection, I have to make myself easier to love. less direct, less expressive, less me. That's where masking comes in. Most neurodivergents are already experts at camouflaging. We learned early that our natural expressions, whether it's a stimming behavior, a blunt truth, or a passionate monologue, make people uncomfortable. So we edit ourselves. We soften the edges, we make our excitement more contained, and we disguise our pain. In relationships, this often means suppressing what's real to keep things smooth. We say it's fine when it's not. We match their pace instead of naming our needs. We pretend we're okay with ambiguity, even though we're spiraling inside. And people might even like us this way. They're not liking us per se, but they're liking the version we build for their comfort. Eventually, it starts to feel like the only way to be in connection is to abandon yourself. But that isn't love. That's a performance. And performances like these can be very lonely. If you're autistic or ADHD, you may have noticed how deeply rejection in interpersonal relationships lands. Even smallest things, a delayed reply, a vague answer, a shrug, can spark a full-body panic. This is called rejection-sensitive dysphoria, and it's brutal. To protect ourselves from that pain, we start craving certainty. We ask questions like, what are we? Where do we stand? Are you still interested? You're not seeking control, but your nervous system is begging for safety. But when we act, sometimes people react as if we're being demanding, like they're being pressured to give a set response. But needing emotional stability isn't too much. It's a basic human need, especially when you've spent a lifetime feeling like emotional consistency is rare and fragile. And here's the hardest part. Even when we know someone isn't showing up for us, we often hang on longer than we should. Not because we don't see the red flags, but because some part of us is still waiting for a different ending. That younger part of you, the one who grew up feeling overlooked, misread, too much, or never quite enough, wants to believe that this time, if you show up perfectly, someone will stay. This is unprocessed grief trying to rewrite the story. You might tell yourself, if I just explain it more clearly, if I ask more gently, if I need less. But relationships that require you to shrink in order to stay aren't relationships. They're negotiations for safety that never deliver. Leaving doesn't mean you gave up. It means you stopped waiting for someone else to make you feel whole. One of the most common traps of anxious attachment, especially for neurodivergents with maladaptive daydreaming or who experience limerence, is the imagined relationship. When someone is kind of there but not, offering emotional intimacy but not consistency, your brain starts building a version of them that feels real. You replay your conversations, you analyze their tone, you interpret every pause, emoji, and double text like it's a clue. And without realizing it, you build a relationship that mostly exists in your head. This is a coping mechanism. It's your brain trying to create certainty and coherence when there is none. It's also an escape hatch from loneliness. But it can keep you from seeing what's actually happening. You're not in a relationship with a person, you're in one with potential. And when that fantasy starts to fade, when you finally see the mismatch between what you hoped for and what's actually happening, it hurts. That realization can feel like grief, but it's also the starting point for something new, something more grounded. Healing from attachment injuries isn't a before and after photo. It's not a linear path. It's not a moment of peace that never leaves. It's noticing just a little sooner when your stomach clenches after an unclear text, and instead of blaming yourself, you name what you need. It's recognizing the urge to chase, but pausing to ask, do I actually want this person, or do I want to feel comforted and safe? It's setting a boundary and staying with the unease, rather than rushing to fix their discomfort with you. It's grieving the time you lost trying to be a version of yourself that was acceptable, mourning the connections that were only sustainable when you were performing, letting go of the fantasy relationship that only worked in your imagination. And eventually, it's finding yourself again, a self that's not trying to be easy or likable, but honest and whole. Here's a surprising part of healing. When someone treats you with respect, consistency, and clarity, it might not feel romantic right away. In fact, your nervous system might read it as flat or boring. That's not because it is boring. It's usually because your attachment system is used to chaos. It's adjusted to confusion. So when someone shows up without games, without mixed messages, without making you prove you're worthy of their attention, your brain doesn't know what to do with that. But peace takes getting used to. What feels like meh might actually be the beginning of something safe, something solid, something real. But let me say this clearly. You are not a burden, no matter what others and their behavior might lead you to believe. Your need for directness isn't an inconvenience. Your sensitivity isn't a flaw. Your longing for depth and consistency aren't unreasonable. Your longing for depth and inconsistency isn't unreasonable. These are not weaknesses. They are reflections of your capacity to care deeply. And if someone recoils from that, it tells you about them, not about your worth. People who can't meet you there will often try to make you feel like the issue. You deserve relationships that don't make you question if you're hard to love. You deserve to be around people who meet your vulnerability with presence, not distance, who listen, not disappear, who clarify, not dodge. You don't have to dilute yourself to be kept around. If all of this feels overwhelming, if you're recognizing yourself in these patterns and wondering what to do with it, it's okay to pause. So many of us didn't have the language for this until well into adulthood. The good news is that understanding doesn't come all at once. It comes in small, quiet decisions, like staying here and listening. Know that when your anxious attachment style gets activated, you're responding to years of unmet needs, misunderstood emotions, and relationships where clarity wasn't always in reach. And that doesn't make you weak. It means your system has been working overtime to protect you. You can stop pretending to be okay with almost friendship, almost love. You don't need more tolerance. You need more truth. Start small. One boundary, one pause before you send the follow-up text, one check-in with yourself that says, what do I actually need here? And remember, when you stop chasing people who confuse you, you make space for people who see you. If you found this video helpful, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and share it with anyone you think might benefit from my content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.